The training hall of the Galactic Coalition Academy stretched across 300 meters of polished crystalline floor, its vaulted ceiling displaying a holographic map of known space. 200 cadets from 40 different species stood at attention, their varied anatomies creating a bizarre tapestry of scales, fur, and synthetic plating. At the front stood Instructor, a Zaxian warrior whose reputation preceded him like a shockwave. His 4 arms rippled with corded muscle, each limb capable of crushing titanium. His exoskeleton bore the scars of 100 campaigns, and his mandibles clicked with barely contained aggression as he surveyed the new recruits. "I am Velcroth," he announced, his translator rendering his clicks and hisses into the common tongue. "I have survived the Nebula Wars. I have walked the volcanic plains of Kresnine, and I have killed humans." A murmur rippled through the assembled cadets. Humans were still relatively new to the Coalition, their reputation more myth than fact. Velcroth's compound eyes glittered with something that might have been pride. 3 humans, to be precise. Soldiers who thought their Deathworld origins made them special. They died like any other soft-flesh species, screaming, bleeding, begging. Near the back of the formation, Angela Martinez stood perfectly still. Her dark eyes tracked the Instructor's movements with the kind of focus that predators reserve for prey. Beside her, Devin Chen shifted slightly, recognizing the dangerous calm that had settled over his friend. "The humans think they are warriors," Velcroth continued, warming to his subject. "They come from a world so hostile it should have killed them in their cradles. Gravity that crushes, whether that murders, predators at every turn. And yet they survived." He paused, mandibles spreading in what passed for a Zaxian smile. "But survival is not the same as strength. When faced with true warriors with Zaxions, they fall like all the rest." Angela's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Devon saw her hands ball into fists at her sides. "In fact," Velcroth said, "I found humans to be disappointingly fragile. One had the audacity to challenge me to single combat. He lasted 7 seconds before you're lying." The words cut through the hall like a blade through water. Every head turned. Angela had stepped forward from the formation, her posture relaxed, but her eyes burning with cold fire. Velcroth's head swiveled toward her with serpentine grace. "What did you say, cadet?" "I said you're lying, sir." Angela's voice remained level, almost conversational. "No human soldier would last only 7 seconds against you. Either you're exaggerating your victory, or they weren't soldiers at all." The hall had gone deathly quiet. Challenging an instructor, especially one with Velcroth's credentials, was grounds for immediate dismissal. "You dare question my honor?" Velcroth's voice dropped to a dangerous rumble. He moved forward with surprising speed, covering the distance to Angela in 3 long strides. His bulk towered over her 5'6" frame. "What species are you to speak so boldly?" "Human, sir." The word landed like a grenade. Velcroth's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Zaxian equivalent of laughter. "Perfect. Then allow me to demonstrate exactly what happened to your fellow soldiers. Perhaps a practical lesson will teach you proper respect." He gestured to the sparring circle at the center of the hall. "You and I now unarmed combat. When you yield, and you will apologize for your insolence before the entire academy." Angela walked to the circle without hesitation. Devon started to follow, but she shook her head slightly. This was her fight. The other cadets pressed closer, forming a ring around the combatants. Velcroth removed his equipment harness, his forearms flexing in sequence. Each of his limbs was thicker than Angela's torso. "Human," he said, settling into a fighting stance. "You are about to learn why your species should have stayed on your Deathworld." "Maybe," Angela replied, rolling her shoulders. "Or maybe you're about to learn why we left." Velcroth lunged. What happened next would be debated in the Academy's halls for years to come. Those watching from certain angles swore they saw Angela move before Velcroth did, as if she'd predicted his attack. Others claimed she simply reacted with impossible speed. The truth was simpler. Angela had grown up on a world where everything wanted to kill her, where split-second reactions meant the difference between life and death, where reading an opponent's intentions wasn't a skill, it was survival. As Velcroth's uppermost right arm shot forward in a crushing blow, Angela wasn't there. She'd dropped low and to the left, her hand snapping out to strike a cluster of pressure sensors at the joint of his lower right arm. The limb went momentarily numb. Velcroth's eyes widened. Humans shouldn't know Zaxian anatomy. His second attack came faster, all 4 arms moving in a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm through sheer mass and speed. Angela flowed between the strikes like water, her movements economical and precise. She'd been in fights since she was old enough to walk with bullies, with trained fighters, with Earth's unforgiving environment itself. She struck again. this time at a nerve cluster in his lower left arm. Another limb compromised, Velcroth roared, abandoning technique for raw aggression. He threw his full weight into a charge meant to crush her against the floor. Angela sidestepped, grabbed his still functional upper left arm, and used his own momentum to guide him past her. As he stumbled, she leaped onto his back, her arm snaking around his throat in a chokehold that targeted the exact spot where Zaxian carotid analogues converged. The entire exchange had taken 4 seconds. "Yod," Angela said quietly, her voice audible only to Velcroth, "or I tighten this hold and you go unconscious in front of everyone." Velcroth's remaining functional arms scrabbled at her grip, but the angle was wrong and his 2 deadened limbs couldn't assist. His vision began to darken at the edges. He tapped frantically against her. On the universal signal of surrender. Angela released him immediately, stepping back as he collapsed to one knee, gasping. The hall remained silent, 200 cadets processing what they'd just witnessed. Angela offered her hand to help him up. Velcroth stared at it for a long moment before accepting. "The humans you killed," Angela said softly, loud enough for only him to hear. "They weren't soldiers, were they? They were civilians. Maybe colonists, maybe scientists." Velcroth's mandibles trembled. "I thought so," Angela continued, "because a human soldier would have done exactly what I just did. We don't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survive by being the most adaptable, the most relentless, and the most unwilling to quit. That's what living on a Deathworld teaches you." She stepped back and addressed the instructor formally. "Permission to return to formation, sir." Velcroth straightened slowly, his pride wounded but something else flickering in his compound. "Ice perhaps, respect, perhaps fear. Granted. And cadet, you have taught this old warrior a valuable lesson today." As Angela returned to her position beside Devon, who wore a barely suppressed grin, Velcroth turned to address the assembly. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Never assume you understand your enemy's capabilities based on appearance alone. The humans are Deathworlders not because their planet tried to kill them, but because they refused to die." He looked directly at Angela. "And that, cadets, is a warrior's true strength." The training session continued, but something had shifted in the hall. The human cadets stood a little taller. The alien cadets looked at their human companions with new eyes. And Instructor Velcroth, for perhaps the first time in his long military career, understood that surviving wasn't the same as living and that humans had mastered both.